Hello? 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 Oh, thank God. It's just Cosmo. Power's out. There's nobody here.
Let's play!
The very first Conjuring movie went on to spawn a pretty big horror franchise, and I'm not sure if they really knew that it would be as big as it became. Multiple spin-offs, the entire Annabelle franchise, which made quite a bit of money in hindsight.
You're forgetting about the critically acclaimed The Nun.
Oh yes, of course, The Nun 1 and 2. I never really cared for that movie.
Very critically acclaimed, very good.
Yeah, especially if you're French. But I wanted to talk about this movie with you today and review it a little bit because this is a movie I never expected to be as interesting as it was. And it focuses on two people who actually did exist. Depending on whether or not you believe what they said is going to be up to interpretation. But the movie is about Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were real-life people who were demonologists. Essentially, they investigated paranormal activity in the world. And they were controversial figures in real life, partially because the existence of the paranormal is still controversial, like to this day. There are people who don't believe in it, there are people who believe very strongly in it, and the movie leans into this with a lot of people not even believing them. And I think, though, too, regardless of your beliefs, this movie and the Conjuring universe does a very good job of making the paranormal feel like it exists in that world.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty believable in that scenario, especially because all of the stuff that goes on is stuff that I have heard about. I grew up Catholic, and all of the stuff that kind of goes on there I have heard about actually being a thing with people who believe in the paranormal, like, you know, the 3 knocks or 3 scratches as, like, being a
taunt to the Trinity type thing and a paranormal Trinity activity.
Yeah, and I thought that was all really interesting. There are some things in the movie that obviously are pretty embellished, like the one kid being dragged around by her hair on the floor. I don't know if that would actually happen in real life. But, like, in the context of that universe, I do think it's pretty believable.
Take Maurice here. He's a French-Canadian farmer, had nothing more than a 3rd-grade education, yet after he was possessed, spoke some of the best Latin I'd ever heard, sometimes backwards.
If you look into his eyes, you can see him tearing blood.
Well, and I think the intro to the movie does a good job actually establishing that, too. Kind of like you said, like, it starts with a lecture, them talking about the paranormal activity around the Annabelle doll is right near the beginning.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I liked hearing about the Annabelle doll. I really liked the intro with the 2 girls who thought the Annabelle doll was a poor child spirit who needed their help, but then it was just a horrific demon who, like, was messing with them. I found that extremely interesting.
Well, something you mentioned to me, too, is this movie is scary without being overly graphic. You've seen a lot of horror movies. I would say you saw more of them growing up than I did when I was younger. And you said that a lot of them that you saw were just blood and gore for the sake of it.
There's a lot of different franchises that really lean in on the only thing scary is the fact that you are getting hurt or, like, you have to do something really gross. Whereas I think that seeing a paranormal spirit actually be scary is really interesting and fun. I always found things with the paranormal to be really intriguing to me, like, especially when I was a teenager. I was really into watching ghost hunter shows, learning about ghost hunting and all that stuff, because I was very curious about what would be on the other side, and I liked that this movie really went all in on that and talked about, at least in their universe, what was real to them. And I found a lot of that stuff actually genuinely creepy and scary.
It's more psychological horror in that way, which is why I like Silent Hill so much as well. And it's not to say that you can't have blood, you can't have gore, but I think that if you overuse them in films, to me it's not scary at all.
Yes.
You know, you can certainly have your slashers that have blood and gore in them, but I think that there's been this age, especially in the last 20 years, of horror, where people have been desensitized to everything. I mean, we live in an era where people can look up a brutal car crash or a beheading video online. They could find that pretty easily.
Or a guy getting shot.
Yeah, and you could find that really easily. And so I think a lot of movies went in on, well, what if this guy was forced to eat his own arm and then he had to poop it out and someone else had to eat his arm and poop, and that doesn't do anything for me. With this, it actually did set the stakes to these real people are having their lives absolutely destroyed.
And this real woman is being genuinely possessed.
And psychologically tormented.
Yes.
And driven crazy. And a lot of people in the world wouldn't believe them. So, and I think that's where the story became interesting, especially with the villain. You know, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the villain.
Well, something that I thought was really scary about it too is the fact that it's not just a villain that you can run away from. You know, like a lot of times when it's a horror movie, it'll be like, Jason, you can run away from him. Yeah, he usually gets you in the end.
Because they're all idiots in the movie.
Yes, they're usually idiots. But if you were a genuinely really smart person and you were able to get out of that situation, it would be less scary later on to think, oh yeah, that guy's probably in jail now, or he probably is dead, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. Whereas this family, for the rest of their life, thought, what if this spirit comes back to hurt me?
Well, that happened in real life too. These people are, they were their entire lives scared in real life. You know, you can believe that the Perron case didn't happen, that Ed and Lorraine embellished it, or that they lied to this family. You can believe whatever you want about it. But these people are, to this day, like the survivors of this, the daughters that lived, they're still scared. And especially their mother was traumatized her entire life.
Yeah, it was I feel like something about that is really scary, that it's kind of like a villain you can't get away from, and that it can come back. And I think that's pretty terrifying to think about. So that's partially why I liked the villain. I also just liked the villain because I thought that she was very real, you know, because it makes sense to me that in the time period they were talking about, where that woman Bathsheba came from, why she did what she did, and all the things that led up to it. I don't know if I'm allowed to do spoilers here.
I think we're spoiling certain things, but like not going so far into the movie that there's no point to watch it. I think what we can say about that is just that everything that happens in this movie, it's part of a cycle. And it kind of goes to show like, oh, these people are just another notch in the chain in this paranormal cycle, which it does add to that horror. They're just another set of victims. Yeah,
and it's all just because there's basically a curse on this land, which makes sense to me, that like some horrible witch would put a horrible curse on the land, especially somebody who in her past she did kill people. And I just find the whole thing extremely interesting to see into this life of this evil human being who then died and continued being evil into the afterlife.
Something I really liked that you talked about with the movie was that the heart of the movie isn't just a horror film. It really excels because it's also not a family movie in the sense of bring your kids, but a family movie in the sense of it being about relationships, especially between Ed and Lorraine.
Yes.
I actually got the feeling that, I believe it's Vera Farmiga, I believe is how you say her name, but I got the feeling that her and Patrick Wilson, who played Ed and Lorraine, were actually married. You know, it felt like they could have been a real-life couple.
Yeah, if you'd have told me that those people were married in real life, I would have believed you.
They had a really good chemistry.
You've got to help them.
I know. I'll start with the Chevy.
Yes, they completely did. I genuinely thought, like, in those scenes when they were looking at each other, I genuinely thought, oh, that's real love in their eyes. They were very good actors, and they had great chemistry. And I really liked the themes of the movie that had to talk about the family sticking together even in these horrible times that they were going through. You know, that family loved each other so much that they tried so hard to stick together. And I was very intrigued by the fact that the little girls at the end of the movie, after everything that happened, were not terrified of a specific person in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't want to say exactly who, but I'm just kind of surprised that after that they were able to get past it and be like, yeah, it's fine now.
Obviously, we can talk about stuff like the cinematography I thought was done very well. I thought that the way that they frame shots is actually scary. They add in suspense. The themes of the movie tie in well to the way that they shoot it with director James Wan and trying to have certain things in the shots, like seeing Lorraine look behind Ed and see someone hanging from a tree, but Ed can't see that because she's the more clairvoyant one and he's not. You know, the way that they shoot that stuff, I feel like it ties in as well to less is more in some extent, and even the respect towards religion. I feel like some people go a little too far on either extreme here. Most religious movies lose people because they feel preached at. You know, they feel like, oh, geez, I'm in Sunday school and I'm, 40 watching this movie. Or it feels like some really big edgelord who had like 3 Christian people in their life that were mean to them has decided to join r/atheism and write a script. These are both dumb. You come off very silly if you're ridiculously preachy or you are ridiculously disrespectful and talking down at anyone who believes this thing.
I liked that this movie had a balance with that, where there were characters who didn't believe in this stuff at all.
Yeah.
And then there was characters who did believe in it, but they were able to get along, and they didn't, hate each other and have, an r/atheism war on Reddit. Well, it was really great.
It also just felt like the people who wrote the script didn't want to bash you over the head with the messaging, but they also didn't want to ignore it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. I mean, that's also why you'll remember movies as actual cinema, like Passion of the Christ. Those movies will be remembered more than a lot of religious movies that are remembered as religious slop.
Yeah.
Even by people who are religious, they'll look at that and be like, geez, this was poorly written. What happened here?
I also think this movie had a really good story going on. You learn a lot about the villain, you learn about the villain's past victims, and all of that stuff culminates into a really interesting story with a really interesting climactic point. And I really enjoyed it all the way through, and I felt like this was one of the better written horror movies I have ever seen in my life for that, just because it actually focused on story over scares, even though it was still scary.
Well, and there is a message and quote in here from the real Ed Warren, especially at the end of the movie, that does tie into, the belief systems of Catholicism and stuff like that. But in general, you could leave this movie and just believe it in the context of that world, and it's still scary. It is genuinely about choices and evil and versus good and all of these things. And I think it would be disrespectful to ignore the Christianity side of it and say, oh, it has nothing to do with it. It does. But I also think it would have been very easy to write this movie in a terrible way that pushed people away from the movie and did not spawn sequels. But they are... I just genuinely am impressed because I don't see movies tackle this kind of serious subject matter very often in a way that's entertaining for people.
And accessible for all kinds of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really do enjoy the mystery aspect of this, where you go into it and things don't really seem all that scary at first. There's a couple of weird happenings here and there, but you don't really know what the heck's going on or why anyone would be so upset. And they kind of throw you into the movie with this saying where they're like, oh, this was the most scary case Ed and Lorraine Warren ever did, so much so that they never told anyone about it until now. And you're like, okay, well, what's gonna make this that great? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the story unfolds and the mystery unfolds and you find out all of this stuff about the different characters and what's going on in that house, and things just get darker and darker and darker until it gets to the darkest point in the movie. And I really enjoyed that slope towards that. It was really interesting. It was very fun to watch. It was captivating. I didn't get bored partway through and be like, oh yeah, just another bitch screaming.
Right, yeah, get to the point.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that can certainly happen too with slashers, is people are just waiting for someone to die. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, move on to the next victim. Let's see how you kill them. Mm-hmm. Something I do like about this, not to say that slashers are terrible movies, I just think that they're played out in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But something I like about this is that you get these little bits and pieces of who the villain is, who side characters are over time, and the mystery of that land. And, for me personally, I didn't even know if I needed to include this or not, but I don't believe that the Warrens were frauds. I think that I have seen enough weird things in my life to believe in the paranormal, to believe that it exists. And I was, raised Christian and stuff, but that said, I also really don't care if other people don't believe it, because I figure that's between them and God, or them and their beliefs or whatever.
Well, even if you don't believe it, it's still made for a really entertaining film.
That's exactly what I was getting to. You can have someone like me, and I actually watched this before with a friend who was very atheist, And we enjoyed it the same amount for, very different backgrounds. And I thought that way that they handle it, I said it before, but I think that it really does tie into as well the believability of the film. I've seen the other Conjuring movies. I actually, spoiler alert, like a lot of them, and maybe we'll review them eventually. But for me, this movie's the most down-to-earth Conjuring movie, where it's just very much this one spirit and some other spiritual things going on. And it's dark, it's depressing at times, but it has a lot of hope in it. And it feels like if you believed the paranormal existed, most of the things in the movie could happen.
And certain parts of it are filmed like those ghost hunter shows that you would watch on like the Discovery Channel, where they're actually like going around the house with their little devices and trying to figure out like evidence of the ghost being there.
Yeah, evidence of the paranormal.
And I found that really fun, that it was like, yeah, that makes sense that they would actually do that even in the 1970s, I believe, is when this took place. It makes sense that they would actually go around doing that. I really liked the way the camera kind of looked like somebody from the film was holding it, like it wasn't just a cameraman, it was an actual dude holding it as if it was like a group of friends doing a ghost hunting thing. I just found that really fun and entertaining, and it felt very down to earth and like you were actually watching these people try and solve something rather than just watching a movie.
Yeah, I think it would have been very stupid if, as paranormal investigators, they didn't actually investigate. If they just showed up and knew everything that was happening.
Yes.
It would have been a very fake-feeling movie. Also, I did like in general that with this movie being down-to-earth in those ways, that it can just be watched on its own, and you never have to watch 2 or Annabelle or anything. You can. I like them. But you don't have to. And I think horror movies in general really suffer from 500 sequels or spin-offs. The Conjuring is no different, that it has some movies that are far weaker than others. Something I like about The Conjuring 1 is you can sit down. It is probably one of, if not the best films in the franchise for how it's done, its believability, its respect to the source material, its respect to the audience, its respect to the paranormal.
Which brings us to the 3 stages of demonic activity: infestation, oppression, and possession.
And the clocks stop at 3:07 a.m.
All of them?
Everyone.
All of those things make it just feel like a actual possession movie, but not one that's overdone. Possession movies and slashers, they've been going on really since probably, especially the 80s in terms of just a lot of them, both. And for this to come out during this time in the early 2000s and still feel fresh, and still feel fresh now after a billion more bad possession movies, I think goes to show how tight the script was, how well all of it was handled, how good the acting was. I would put this, I don't know where I'd put this, but it's probably in like my top 10 to 15 horror movies.
Yeah, I think it's probably in my top 5 horror movies that I've liked.
It's just very good.
Like top 5 favorites, I mean.
Yeah. They just handled it all very well, and I would pretty much recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it a lot. And I hope that you guys watch it and enjoy it too. Yay!
If you enjoyed this, please let us know. Leave a like, subscribe, do things like that. We appreciate it. The movie reviews are not exactly super high viewed things, so you interacting with it in some way, hyping it, commenting, doing stuff like that, does help these videos out a lot, and we appreciate you for it. Also, as well, we do have all kinds of stuff going on right now for the spooky Halloween season. We've got some new Let's Plays going on over on Degenerate Plays. We got videos on the other channels, and as well, we do have new stock over on our store, cosmobunny.shop. The only thing scary over there, how good the prices are. Use code MOON for 20% off your first purchase over there. I believe that is ending after Halloween Day, so be sure to check that sale out. Otherwise, if you watch this after, code DJAY123 gets you 10% off your first purchase. We hope you have a fantastic day. If you feel like you are being tormented by a demon, probably take that seriously. Whether you're a believer or not, maybe go talk to your church like these people did. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe talk to a priest or something.
That's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, have a good one and stay shway.